Welcome to episode 157 of The Numbers Game. I'm Jace and I'm here with Nick and Marty. How you going today, fellas?
Going well, thanks, Jace. Going okay. Got a new haircut from a new place. The person didn't speak English and I've come out looking like a half-mangled rooster. And I'm not sure what to do about it. When you're 52, you haven't got much margin of safety to play with. So I'm feeling adventurous, but feeling a little bit self-conscious. So don't jump onto YouTube right now and give me grief with comments. But anyway, you can't see it in the audience, so that's okay. Nick, how are you? Your hair's looking marvellous. Can I just say?
Mate, short back and sides hasn't changed for about 35 years. So I actually don't think you look too bad, mate. Just maybe a little bit more spike, but I thought maybe you just changed your product or something.
Yeah.
I don't mind it.
Yeah.
Maybe Marty's just not good with change.
Maybe.
A bit embarrassed to leave through the front door, but I did. I was courageous.
I'll take a bit of confidence from Nick and I, mate. We think you look good, and that's all that matters. So
thank you, mate. Feel better.
Looking good, Marty. And feeling good, refreshed. I've just come off I've just come off a golf trip to Barnbougle, which I do annually. So for anyone that's unsure, it's basically the Disneyland of golf. So if you are into your golf at all and you haven't been to Barnbougle, make sure you jump online and book that trip. Unbelievable, but 5 games of golf in 4 days, so a bit bruised and battered, physically, mentally, the ego as well. But we'll push through. Had some good moments, so that's all you can hope for, Marty. And pretty happy with the hairdresser at the moment, so things could be worse. Jace, how are you, mate?
Mate, good. Marathon training is ramping up. The London Marathon is fast approaching. So depending on when you're listening to this, but the April 2024 is fast approaching. And the London Marathon's the back end, maybe the 21st. So Greg and I are running for Get Kids in, I've got to get this right. We're running for a charity and I'll look this up as we go, but it's Get Kids into Life or Get Kids into Life. It's basically kids in wheelchairs, getting them into sport so that they can have a bit of something to look forward to and a bit of purpose in life and energy and training. So especially at that younger age, if they are put into a wheelchair through an accident or disability, just giving them, that outlet to have. So Greg and I are off to London for that, and the training's ramping up. So body's holding up okay. I'm not getting any younger. But so far so good. So the couple of 24s, 28s, a few big long runs happening, and then I'll start to tail back away. I don't know all the terminology. I'm not a seasoned professional like Greg. I think we'll need to get him on for another interview. He's at his 1,200 to 1,300 days straight running since that last episode. If you're not familiar with it, go back through the Numbers Game catalogue. There's an interview with Greg Bramich. He's my business partner at Future Advisory, and he still hasn't missed a day of running. He'd be approaching 1,300 days straight now and going for a sub 3-hour marathon. So this is a guy that 3 years ago was 17 kilos heavier and wasn't running at all. So it really shows you can reshape your life and do something different that you haven't done before.
Inspirational, really. Unbelievable.
100%. Anyway, so long-winded way of saying going well, and excited for today's episode, Nick, where the buzz has worn off a couple of weeks ago. We had the Super Bowl, and as the buzz from Taylor Swift and, the Chiefs getting it done and the poor 49er fans that are all absolutely shattered, what have you decided to unpack for us today?
Well, I thought it was worth unpacking the cost of tickets to go to the Super Bowl. I think if you didn't see what was happening around Super Bowl time, you're living under a rock. Taylor Swift has just brought a whole nother level of supporters, which I'm sure the NFL are more than happy for. But it just seems every year that it's more and more Aussies not only getting into the spirit of watching the game, but also appear to be going over to the Super Bowl to watch the game. So what has baffled me, though, in speaking with some people that I know who have gone and looking at some packages to go over, is the price of their ticketing system or the price of their tickets and the whole ticketing system. And for anyone who is unaware, most sporting events in America work on a supply and demand system. So the reselling of tickets is quite normal over there, unlike in Australia. And if you want to go to big events, you need to pay big money. So the NBA is a really good example. Jason, I know you're a big NBA fan, but as you get closer to the pointy end of the season, call it playoffs, tickets seem to go up and up and up. But with the Super Bowl being such a big event, only being one event per annum, the tickets are absolutely out of control. Marty, you want to hazard a guess at the average price of a Super Bowl ticket in the year 2024 that has just been? Remembering it was in Las Vegas, our adult Disneyland.
Yeah, well, tier 2 on the MCG is probably about $100 on a big game. So surely we're in that ballpark, Nick, aren't we?
The average price paid to go to the Super Bowl in the year 2024, and most of the tickets, a lot of them, I'll just say, a lot of them include packages where you get drinks and parties around the Super Bowl. But the average price was $12,000 US to go to the Super Bowl to watch the 49ers versus the Chiefs. So I read that and I thought, impossible. There's got to be other options. So there is other options, which is the normal tickets that are released. So before anyone got involved from a reselling point of view, and we go down the economics, supply-demand road, for a ticket in the nosebleed section, as we would call it in Australia, $950 US, all the way up to $9,500 for tickets that are pretty close to the ground. So what you have then is you have people buying these tickets, professionals buying these tickets and reselling them, because that's the thing that's done. There are access to tickets through NFL employees, coaches and players also get access to tickets, but they also resell them at exorbitant prices to the point where the average punter and the poor San Francisco 49ers fan who lives and breathes the 49ers needs to pay $10K to go and watch their team in the grand final. A couple other things. That's a little bit higher than normal this year because it is Vegas. Vegas is obviously a town where people want to go. So, they don't just go there to watch the NFL. What would have been surrounding the Super Bowl at Vegas would have been possibly the best weekend of your life if that's what you're into. So people would have paid overs. You're close to areas like LA, so you've got a lot of celebrities and whatnot that would like to attend. You've also got the stadium in Vegas, only holds 60,000. I think the stadium they had last year holds just around 70,000, just 10,000 less tickets, so that wouldn't have made a massive difference. I thought what else was interesting was, those who watched the game would have seen Taylor Swift cross to quite a lot. She was in a box. So a box at the NFL was Super Bowl was $1.2 million for one of those boxes, if that's what you chose.
Wow.
So big money. That's 1.2 million US.
Which is 1.85 million AUD at the moment.
Yeah.
1.85 million to sit in a box and watch the Super Bowl.
I've got more on this, but I just wanted to open it to you boys because it made me just think about how different it is here in this country. And I listen to SEN quite a lot, and during the AFL season, there is so much talk back on ticketing, on complaints about the price of tickets, particularly around grand final time and finals time, particularly in the last few years when you've had some big names like Richmond and Collingwood and Carlton in big names. And, if you were listening to SEN at any stage throughout the final series, there would have been complaints you would have heard around ticketing, who gets access, how the price goes up because they get scalped. I think it's no secret that AFL players do get handed tickets, and yes, they do sell them for cash. This actually does happen. So I thought about our country and imagine the uproar if it was purely supply and demand. Game on. Whoever wants them, whoever wants to pay the most for them gets them, and that's it. Could you imagine what we'd be dealing with in this country? There'd be riots on the streets, I would have thought.
I saw the Australian Open this year. The tennis had dynamic ticketing. Mm-hmm. And the sooner you got in, the cheaper it was. But then as seats were taken, the prices went up. It's probably, I don't know if that's happened previously. First time I've seen it, but it got a bit horrendous once you got to the ladies and men's final on that premise as well. So but I think it's interesting, Nick, because it is a world now event, and I go, it's a bucket list event. So it's like, the fact is they can put the price up and they're filling the stadium. Doesn't mean it's right, for the average punter, but they've got something now. You talk about Disneyland, same concept. They keep putting the prices up. More people keep coming. And I go, if I was going to go to the Super Bowl for 1 year, that's a big expense, but that's a bucket list thing. And you go, where else are you going to spend that money to do things like that? You go, if you love sports, it's a signature product. So I don't agree with the price. I'd like to see more people get in on a lower price, but they can demand that, which is credit to them too, to be able to create such a spectacle.
Well, it does make you wonder as well, as we start to see dynamic pricing for the Australian Open, and there's a few legitimate ticket resale sites now popping up in Australia. When, does the AFL Grand Final become the ability to do that, to have these legitimate ticket resales? I know for the Swans Geelong game the other year, Casey's a Swans supporter, and we were messaging, doing the Facebook post, the Instagram story, saying, hey, we're chasing tickets, we're happy to pay whatever, and all of a sudden you're in these private conversations going, I want $1,000, 800, whatever. And if this was just able to go onto a resale site, pay based on supply and demand, and get it done, I'm not saying it's right, but that almost feels better to me, to have a verified place like StubHub. I remember back in the States in 2020, we went to a hometown derby between the Clippers and the Lakers, and LeBron James was playing, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, I don't know if they were there. Yeah, they were there at the time. Anyway, whoever was there, but LeBron James was definitely there. It was the hometown derby, and the ticket prices, to rebuy somebody else's seats a few rows from the front were ridiculous, but it was just the norm. If you wanted to buy a ticket to a more popular game, you paid more money based on supply and demand. So it'd be interesting, imagine Anzac Day, Bombers and Collingwood. It's a sellout most years. If people want the tickets more than somebody else, should you have the ability to resell it and make a bit of money back on, if you've been paying an AFL membership for 10 years and you barely go to a game, should you be able to legally resell your ticket?
Jace, we haven't won a premiership, obviously, for 23 years, an exorbitant amount of days. But How much would you pay to see Essendon play in the grand final? You would, if you had the money available, you would find out what that ticket was worth, wouldn't you?
I think the price is in the thousands. And obviously, I'd want to make sure the Bombers are a good chance to win. But if we made it there, it's always that thing as well. I got a mate that went to the Super Bowl. He's a 49ers fan, like massive 49ers fan. And he's just dropped whatever he dropped to get over there and see it. And the year before, another mate went to see the Philadelphia Eagles, and they lost. So it's that, like, you can spend thousands of dollars for the chance to see your team succeed, and then they lose, and you're left with that double, I guess, whammy of you've spent a bomb money-wise, and you're just devastated and depressed that your team lost. But also, then what happens if you're not there and you're missing out on that feeling, that once-in-a-lifetime potentially for some people, especially if you're a Saints fan or a Bulldogs fan and whatnot, like, these are once-in-a-lifetime things that have happened so far.
We paid $450 each for Charlie Cole and I to see Ash Barty play in the final, because we knew that it was a significant event. So we dropped $1,000 on that, but it was significant. But we won't go and do other, just generic crap during the year. We'll actually save up for those moments. So when it's significant, we want to be there, because that's memories to last a lifetime. So it's so it depends where you're at and what you want to do. But I think they're the things that sort of stay in your memory as well. And she won, so of course it was exciting. And then she retired, and it was like, oh my goodness, we'll never get to see that again. So to me, that was a signature moment. But I still nearly choked when I purchased the ticket and spent that money, right? But even though it was part of the plan, so it's an interesting dynamic. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, you both know I'm an Adelaide Crows supporter, so I paid an exorbitant amount of money for tickets to the 2017 Grand Final, and I won't tell you how much because you won't believe me, but I think post that was the first year Richmond got in. So that's when the ticket pricing went out of control. It was bought from someone who didn't pay that amount of money. That's for sure. So, and they lost. So shocking day. But geez, if they had won and I wasn't there, I would have been absolutely kicking myself. And I think to your point before, Marty, it becomes about the experience. And if you've got the money and you can do it, then why not? But I guess what it really points to is that in American sports, as much as the fans do drive the sport, or the money in the sports, there's so many people, it's all about the money. And that's really the end of the story to a degree. And I just think it's a different expectation. That expectation is there in the States. We don't have that expectation. A really interesting factor, Marty, you're going to love this, but the NFL in 2013 started a private equity fund called 32 Equity that started to invest in groups that used that used NFL products or that were related to NFL. So an example is a data company, like a stats business that did NFL stats. So they basically created their own equity fund, but then invested in other businesses. One of the businesses they took a stake in is called On Location. Now, On Location gets allocated 11,000 NFL tickets per annum. So in 2024, On Location got allocated 11,000 NFL tickets, which then got sold, and On Location sells packages, so the accommodation and everything around that. So again, it's all about the money. The NFL, and they've done that to boost the return to their teams. So they're saying that equity fund has boosted the average value of NFL teams to $3.48 billion. So the NFL is looking at ways they can get more money to their clubs, which means players, everyone gets more money. And by doing that, they're investing in businesses that are benefiting off the NFL product. Now, could you imagine if the AFL did that? And I know that they do it in some from a betting sense with some of the betting companies, but this stuff is common knowledge over there, and it just doesn't seem to be a problem. And it's just, again, that different mentality that they have over there. But how brilliant is that? Well, we're supplying the entertainment, we're supplying the product. If you as a business are going to benefit in it, here's some money to grow your business, but we want to take a stake in it, and then they're bringing that back in. Like, I just thought that was another level. I'm not sure about allocating the 11,000 tickets to On Location, but it's all coming back to the clubs anyway and the NFL anyway.
Does it feel a bit high risk, high reward? Because you're relying on the popularity of the NFL to then, carry forward to these other ventures. But I suppose, if the business is already ready-made and already popular, then there's probably not a lot of huge risk to it.
If you're allocating them 11,000 tickets, how can you go wrong? Next year, just give them 15,000.
Yeah, I suppose you can control the market, I guess, which is, it seems almost
Could you imagine?
wrong, but
Could you imagine our footy clubs diversifying into other companies and building a entrepreneurial empire underneath the brand? I mean, it's just not in our psyche from what we understand it to be. But you got to love the US. They'll sell derivatives of stocks and options. And, it's very entrepreneurial.
I know 10 plus years ago when Xero came out, any accountant that believed Xero was going to be amazing invested in shares in Xero, and they've gone 10x and more. Like, if you got in really early, you're almost 100x if you bought those first couple of bits of shares. So is it like, if you know the industry, you believe in the product, and then you invest in the things that are around the ecosystem, that's incredibly clever of the NFL to do that and control it. Almost a bit manipulative, but will we see that happen in Australian sport, that more of that will start to roll out? Because it always feels like in some ways Australia can be ahead of the US in some things that kind of seem obvious, like coffee, obviously brilliant. But then you look at stuff like this in the US and go, oh man, Australia's got a long way to go to learn how to get sport to, you look at the halftime show entertainment in the Super Bowl, Usher baby, like absolutely smashed it. And what do we get? Meatloaf. So,
yeah.
Australia's continuing to catch up. It's been a bit better in the years post Meatloaf, but still a long way to go.
Or a 30-day subscription to KO or something like that. That's about the extent.
They do deliver an entertainment product so much better than us. Look, I think it's worth noting that there is, they're not happy about it. And that this article that I read was mainly referring to legitimate ticket brokers because, as I've said, ticket resales was a big thing over there. So legitimate ticket brokers were saying that in the past, they would simply buy tickets, make a small clip. It might have been, they bought the ticket for $900. They might sell, I'm just giving you an example here, sell it for $1,500, $1,600, and that's how they ran their business. But now with the NFL giving tickets to the package businesses, these brokers can't make that kind of money anymore. So this was a CBS News report that I read, and the reporter, and take this with a grain of salt, but the reporter had one broker call in apparently who knew that the story was being run and said this year they drove to a NFL employee's house and did an $85,000 cash exchange for a ticket. This is one of the ticket brokers. And it wasn't uncommon to be heading to the game with $1 million of cash ready to buy a ticket. That's the sort of stuff. And we think about that and we go, oh, wow, that doesn't make sense. But you look at the money that's in that country and the money that people are making, and this is the sort of stuff, crazy stuff that's going on. It's just mind-boggling. But imagine going there with $1 million just ready to scalp a ticket out the front. Crazy stuff. And being an NFL employee, and I've just got this ticket, I could probably sell it for $85K cash. And if the NFL did say the NFL is trying to crack down on that, but it's impossible. The AFL says that players don't do it, but of course they do it.
But I had a situation back in, I think it was 2007 when Geelong won the flag against, I think it was Port Adelaide? Might have been Port Adelaide. They won their first flag for a while, smashed them. And Essendon was selling a box. They were trying to sell a corporate box for $35,000. And I had a contact in there going, we can't move the box. We've rang everyone. No one's interested. And it got to 2 days before the granny, and they said, do you want it for $8,000? Now I'm shaking in my boots because I'm going, oh, it's $8,000. But then I go, you know what? I know footy fans. So I got the box for $8,000. And then I said, have you got the list? I want a list of all the Geelong supporters you've been in touch with. So I then ended up selling the tickets for $1,000 for each seat. Plus Cole and I got to go to the grand final for free. So talk about demand. I virtually doubled my money on, but look at the risk though. It was 2 days before, and I just happened to be invited to a football luncheon where I sat next to the guy who had that list. So I said, could you share the list? And rang those Geelong supporters. They're going, for $1,000, absolutely. We weren't willing to pay, $3,000 a ticket, but this is a dream for us. So talk about demand there.
The original ticket shark of Australia.
Absolute ticket shark. But it was such a great thing because I'd always wanted to go in style to a granny, and it was just one of those great moments where, like, Cole and I were laughing, thinking how good is this? We've actually been paid $8,000 to come and watch the granny.
And that was your first granny experience? My first
full-fledged grand final. Yeah. So it was unbelievable. And the guys that were in, like one person bought 8 tickets right off the bat, avid Geelong supporter. So I knew I'd got my money returned pretty much within a couple of hours, and then the rest was a bonus. I didn't really care after that, but it was. I think it comes back to the principle that the demand is there at the right price, but there's such demand in the US, you can dictate that price at a higher level. So we probably got it for a third, sold it for double. That's a win. Like I said, they maybe get something for 85 grand. They probably on sell it for $1 million. You go, it's endless as long as the demand's there. And that's a global event. You know, that's a global event. So I can imagine that would happen quite often.
Definitely. Any closing remark, Nix?
I'm just torn. I don't know if it's right or wrong. That's probably the closing remark I have.
Yep.
To one degree, I think it's right. Because I think, you know, if people are willing to pay and the NFL's is a business, and you can still get entertained via, you know, TV and whatnot. But on the other foot, I think about, you know, the people that can't afford those tickets that support the franchises, being the teams, and, you know, rock up to the home and away games all the time. And, you know, they are, you know, the fans are the club, as all the clubs will say. So, yeah, I'm torn, but I'm probably leaning towards, I think it should be at least accessible to some degree for those loyal fans. And I don't know how you justify who's loyal or not. And the thing that we need to remember about the US is it is such a big population.
Yeah.
So unlike our country, you can have it as fair as you want. You will never get everyone happy because you just cannot get, you can only get a certain amount of people into a stadium. So maybe that's part of the driver. We're never going to keep people happy because we just can't keep up. You know, we just don't have the seats in stadiums. So we've got to make it a revenue thing. So
no, it's a great point. And look, if you are listening and you've enjoyed the unpack of this, we're keen to hear your thoughts on this and your experiences. If you've been involved in the secondary ticket market at the moment, we know Taylor Swift has done the rounds in Australia and tickets were going bonkers. Keen to hear your thoughts, numbers game listeners. You know, what do you think of secondary resale sites? Should it be the way to go in Australia? Have you got experience with the dynamic pricing of the AO and anything to do with NFL, NBA or AFL? We'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email, hello@thenumbersgamepodcast.com.au, and you could also reach out to Jason, Nick or Marty on socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, and the Numbers Game page. If you haven't already, give it a like, give it a follow, review us on Apple or Spotify, and thanks again for listening. It's been brilliant to have you here. Until next time.
If you want to go to the next grand final, just give me a call. Game over.